At his own bank, CEO Richard Howard just wanted to withdraw some cash, but ended up being publicly humiliated. The cold dismissal from teller Laura and the harsh treatment by security guard Derek showed how easily people are judged by appearance, not by truth. But Richard had an unexpected move of his own, and when he returned, everything changed in ways no one saw coming. Just wait until you hear the shocking twist that turned this story upside down, and how justice finally won. Richard Howard was no ordinary customer. As the CEO of Liberty Union Bank, one of the largest banking chains in the country, he was used to sitting in glass-walled boardrooms, discussing profit margins and market share with executives in tailored suits. But that morning, everything changed. For weeks, Richard had felt uneasy. Quarterly reports painted a perfect picture: record customer satisfaction, service times reduced by 20%, client trust at an all-time high. But something didn't sit right. Deep down, Richard knew numbers can lie. He had heard scattered rumors on social media, cold staff, dismissive attitudes, people walking out of branches feeling invisible. So he decided to do something radical, something none of his team would expect. He would go undercover. Wearing old jeans, a faded hoodie, and a baseball cap pulled low, he made himself almost unrecognizable. To complete the look, he left his briefcase at home and stuck his slightly worn debit card into his back pocket. Richard's motivation was simple but personal. He wanted to feel what an everyday customer felt. No scripts, no VIP treatment, no special access. His destination? A busy branch in Brooklyn, one that frequently topped internal performance charts. The moment he stepped inside, Richard could already sense the atmosphere. The air felt heavy. Employees behind the counters worked mechanically, barely looking up at customers. A woman in line ahead of him was nervously fidgeting with her phone, glancing at the clock every few seconds. The security guard stood near the entrance, arms crossed, scanning the room like he was expecting trouble at any moment. Still, Richard remained optimistic. Maybe he was overthinking. When his turn finally came, he stepped up to the counter and gave a friendly, quiet greeting. "Good morning. I'd like to withdraw $500 from my account. Cash, please." The teller, her name badge read Laura, didn't smile. She didn't make eye contact. Instead, she glanced at his clothes, paused, and immediately her expression shifted. Her shoulders tensed, her gaze narrowed. Without even checking his ID, she shook her head and said in a cold, rehearsed tone, "Sorry, sir. This transaction seems questionable. I can't process it." Richard blinked, unsure he heard her right. "Excuse me?" he asked, keeping his voice calm. Laura's answer came even sharper. "We reserve the right to deny service if something seems suspicious. Next customer, please." Behind him, people in line started murmuring. A middle-aged man sighed loudly and said just loud enough for others to hear. Another guy trying to pull a fast one. A young woman behind him tightened her grip on her purse. Richard stood frozen, the realization crashing down on him like a wave. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a mistake in procedure. This was how regular people were treated, every single day. In that moment, in the very building with his company's name on the wall, the CEO of Liberty Union Bank experienced what it felt like to be unwanted and unseen. And worse, he felt powerless. Richard stood still, trying to process what had just happened. Behind him, the line grew impatient. Whispers turned louder. "Security needs to handle this guy. Probably trying to scam the bank." Richard glanced at his clothes. Old jeans, worn-out hoodie. He realized no one saw him as a person, only as a problem. Before he could respond, Derek, the branch security guard, stepped forward. "Sir, if you don't leave right now, I'll have to escort you out," Derek said in a firm, almost robotic tone. Laura, the teller, had already turned to the next customer, ignoring him completely. The humiliation hit hard, not just because of how they treated him, but because deep down, Richard knew why this was happening. Years of budget cuts, canceled customer service training, policies that rewarded speed and risk prevention over real connection. This wasn't an accident. This was the culture he had allowed to grow. As he walked out the door, heart pounding, Richard's embarrassment turned to something stronger. Pure, focused anger, and a single thought followed. "This is my fault, and I'm going to fix it." Richard didn't waste a single minute. As soon as he stepped outside the branch, he pulled out his phone and called his executive assistant. "Bring the car around and get 2 board members on site. I need them here, now." Within 15 minutes, a sleek black sedan pulled up to the curb. Richard changed into a crisp tailored suit he kept in the car for emergencies. With every button he fastened, his determination grew stronger. This wasn't just about personal pride anymore. It was about sending a message. When Richard walked back into the branch, the transformation was impossible to ignore. Customers turned, employees froze mid-task. Derek, the security guard, instinctively straightened up, but didn't move. Laura, the teller, went pale the moment she recognized him. Richard stepped forward with calm, measured steps and spoke clearly so the entire branch could hear. "Laura, Derek, I'd like a moment of your time, please." They approached slowly, their faces tense. Richard took a deep breath, making sure to keep his tone controlled, but firm. "Allow me to reintroduce myself. My name is Richard Howard, CEO of Liberty Union Bank." The air in the branch turned heavy. Every employee stopped what they were doing. Customers in line stood completely still, eyes wide, watching the scene unfold. Laura's lips trembled. I didn't know. I thought..." Richard held up a hand, stopping her mid-sentence. "This isn't about me being the CEO. This is about how you treated someone you believed was just another customer." He turned toward the rest of the staff and raised his voice just enough. "Today, I experienced firsthand how easy it is for a person to be dismissed, judged, and humiliated before anyone bothers to check the facts." Richard paused for a moment, letting the words sink in. Then he turned back to Laura and Derek. "We will talk again, soon, and there will be changes." Without waiting for a reply, he walked out of the branch, leaving behind an office filled with stunned silence and people realizing this was far from over. The very next morning, Richard stood at the head of the largest conference room at Liberty Union Bank headquarters. In front of him, dozens of regional managers, department heads, and senior executives. The atmosphere was tense. Many had already heard about what happened at the Brooklyn branch. Rumors were spreading fast. Richard looked around the room, pausing to meet the eyes of each person. Then, in a steady, calm voice, he began. "Yesterday, I went to one of our branches. I walked in as an ordinary customer, and I walked out feeling humiliated." The room remained silent. No one dared interrupt. Richard continued, "What I experienced wasn't a one-time mistake. It was the result of every unchecked policy, every ignored complaint, every shortcut we've taken in the name of efficiency." He stepped forward, his tone gaining strength. "From this day forward, that ends." Richard announced sweeping changes. Complete overhaul of customer service training. New employee evaluation criteria, now based not just on speed or sales, but on empathy and professionalism. Mystery customer programs at every branch. Monthly feedback sessions for frontline staff to voice their concerns and ideas. And perhaps the biggest change of all, a direct communication channel where any customer could report poor service, anonymously and with guaranteed review by senior leadership. But Richard didn't stop there. He visited the Brooklyn branch personally 1 week later. This time, not undercover, but openly and with purpose. Laura was there, nervous, unsure what to expect. Richard walked up to her desk and said calmly, "I heard you completed the new training program. How are you feeling?" Laura swallowed hard, then said quietly but sincerely, "Better, more prepared, and honestly, more aware." Richard nodded. "That's all I needed to hear." In the months that followed, customer satisfaction ratings at Liberty Union Bank soared. Complaints dropped, employee morale improved. And Laura? She worked harder than ever, determined to prove herself. 3 months later, she was named Employee of the Month, recognized for her kindness and dedication to each customer who walked through the door. At the bank's annual leadership event, Richard stood on stage in front of hundreds of employees and delivered a final message. "Real change starts with uncomfortable truths. Yesterday, I was the customer no one wanted to help. Today, we're building a bank where that will never happen again." As the crowd erupted in applause, Richard smiled, knowing this was just the beginning of a better, more human bank.